Okay, so before we get into the tier list, I have to make up an apology. I'm sorry it took me a while to get this tier list up. I mean, if you're wondering why, if you look back into my channel for the past 2 months, you will know exactly why. So yeah, fuck you Bushido for making support for 9 different decks. But regardless, finally it is here, a tier list for DZBT03 and the very first Divine's Relical Booster. It's about damn time! So if you guys here for the first time, welcome. I normally review a brand new right lines or a new boss update to the deck after testing for a week or so, and of course tier list. So my tier list is a little bit different from the tier list you might have seen in the other videos or other part of the internet, as I kind of follow strictly to this particular 3 rules. First rule, no collab nation, at least most of them. I do not have enough knowledge to really cover every single right line from that collab nation, so that's why I decided not to include it, because let's be real, I'm dealing with almost 100 decks already, so I don't want to make my life any harder than that. Secondly is of course limited entry in the higher tier, particularly S tier and A+ tier. This is just to split the decks between OP as heck, great decks, and good decks. And personally for me, I think a lot of deck in the oldest format is in a state that is really playable and actually very good as well. It's just that they're either held back by its own weakness or essentially being hard countered by the current meta of the Vanguard right now. And last but not least, this tier list is based on my experience and my research, so if you guys have your own opinion on certain entry, do leave down in the comments below. And yeah, that is pretty much for the groundwork, so let's get into the tier list. So I decided to make things a little bit interesting here, as a lot of the newer red line and the deck that did get a major support for the past 2 months can kind of be categorized into 5 different groups. Use Quake, or essentially the manga right lines, encounter right lines, Prey cause epic right lines, collab right line, and of course critical supports. So I'm gonna be putting them into the tier list first before I start readjusting, because I feel there's not much to adjust in this tier list. Okay, so let's start off with the manga decks, and we have, it has to be Cardfight first, huh? Emotional damage! Well, this deck is okay at base at the moment. The main mechanic of the deck is being personal soul blasting is cool and all, but it is also its biggest weakness because of the fact that it is really hard to set it up properly, even with a very specific PR from the manga that helped the deck to actually set up properly. Not good enough! I think the best way to fix Cardfight is having a card that can be treated as other card that you want to soul blast, and right now Cardfight doesn't have something like that, so for me I'm gonna put Cardfight in like high C. Good luck next season. Contrast to how bad Cardfight is as a deck, Saohihaja is actually a very solid deck, and I kind of get why the old man in the manga actually used him. He has so much great restriction on top of being able to hit a really good number and do a decent multi-attack. Of course, you have to play multiple Sutra to make it happening, but you have to play Sutra anyway to get that restriction. So I think all is well. So how high I'm willing to put Saohihaja into this tier list? Well, mid A tier. The deck has a lot of toolbox to actually utilize many of the things really well, but do lacking in some other department, namely counter charge and hand size. Like needing to play 2 order is nothing new in the D format with Soga running around, but I do feel that the same issue that Soga has also run in the course of Saohihaja as well. And unlike Soga, who do have a way to get around this defensively, Saohihaja doesn't have that at the moment. So mid A tier feels right for me. Next up, we have this Among Us, aka Silhouette, and I'll say this now, the support that he received is actually really good. I mean, we get the 5th attack enabler in the form of PR a while back, and then now he has a card that literally just give him additional crit and refill his soul, aka his new arms, the Drill Arms. This card alone I feel really helps the deck a lot, because it actually turns the ridiculously high power that this deck already has and give it a proper pressure. And not only that, the deck also have another Searcher, which also help to enable a guard restrict on Silhouette himself, which makes that additional crit even more painful. The only drawback I say at the moment with the deck is the fact that the deck kind of force you to either choose between 5 attacks or having 4 strong attacks. So essentially you have a choice between Rodney and the PR. So I feel if there is a card that can meet in the middle for this deck, that would help a lot. Because of that, I'm gonna put Silhouette right in front of Alden. If you're looking for a good budget deck, Silhouette might be the way to go, especially you don't really need that many expensive staples for this deck, aside from Boba Mine of course.
No. He's got a point.
And then we have the last from the use Quake right line. We have Lurusuru, aka Misty Arc. Misty Arc received 3 additional Misty Arc units, one which is a regular attacker, one which is a draw engine and a guard restrict, and last but not least a brand new grade 1 Misty Arc that I have been wanting the deck to get for a long time, and it's actually pretty damn solid, as it is the discard fodder on top of being able to self-call itself back from drop zone and also give additional power to your entire front row.
It's amazing!
That is how good that new grade 1 is. But is it enough to actually bring the deck from C tier into a higher tier? I think so, yeah. Not high enough to be in the top tier, but I think the deck is solid enough to be on the same level as decks like Hero or Soliron. I'll put her in the middle of the two. Based on the way they have been designing the deck, I feel if they can give a Misty Arc card that has a similar skill as Lurusuru on place, at least just for the discard part, I think that might be interesting to see. Especially you have cards like Milli-Rilin, you know, the giraffe, that allow you to re-trigger the skill twice. Forcing your opponent to discard 3 cards while you're having a whole field sounds disgusting, and I kind of want to see it happening.
Brother,
And then we have the last right line from the manga, and that is Virgila. I already kind of teased about how Virgila get its own deck set, like literally a structure deck of him as a form of promo in Korokoro magazine.
smoke weed every day.
Shame!
And that promo magazine deck is insane. Like, you even get energy generator and counter together with the deck set. Like, I have the thing. The deck set is so good that if you can get it, try to get it, because it is a very good entry point into Vanguard. But how good is the new support? Well, we have essentially a 15k record that is also 15k shield that can be intercept, that is only playable in Virgila, a booster that restand together with that card in itself, and a card that buff that same 15k further on while being a draw and a counter charge.
Why, that's very good.
Whatever weakness Virgila has in the past, it has been ironed out perfectly because of that deck set. But is it good enough to bring Virgila up? Yes, but not as much as Lurusuru. The reason behind that is because the high power that the deck has, unless you are able to rush well on turn 2, which is not exactly the easiest thing to do for Virgila, I feel the deck lacks a little bit of pressure even though the deck has such a high power ceiling. Similar issue with the Luquia in the past, or even right now as well.
Interesting.
And because of that, I am putting Virgila in high B, like top of B. And let's be real, this is the MC deck from the Skyride manga. He will get a new form soon. Like, I can promise you, if he don't get a new form, something is wrong with the writer, because that's not shonen enough. And that's all the decks from the manga. Let's move on to the encounter right line with the only encounter deck that has a significant support, and by that I mean new form, Luquia. Venus is exactly the card that Luquia needs for the long time. Ability to get additional draw, superior call more cards, and also literally buff your entire front row, including herself. So I would say one of the main issue with Luquia being having a very shit Vanguard attack is kind of fixed with the current update. And not only that, the deck can recycle from drop better thanks to applause showers, and can draw a lot better thanks to Fossilor and Venus reliant on energy.
Which is nice and all.
The only drawback I have to say with Luquia right now is the fact that the deck is still very reliant on getting all the key pieces together, and the deck still have trouble on setting up the soul properly for it. Yes, we do have Bifrost, but I do feel Bifrost is far from enough as a card to help the deck set up properly. Like, seriously, Bifrost is great, but unlike decks like Chaos or Drajawo, I feel Luquia needs its own soul builder. And by that I don't mean like random soul charge, I mean like a proper soul building for her to actually play better. And don't forget, this deck also has a really weird condition because of the sucking of 2 rare cards into soul for Vanguard attacks. Yes, we can use Bubetsu, but I'll just link you back to the same issue I mentioned earlier. It's extremely key piece reliant, but so poor at setting it up for herself, and I do feel that weakness of her does weigh her down quite a bit, and that is why I'm leaving Luquia in top of B tier. The deck really needs a way to set up the soul properly, like what Unica does with Bifrost. And it is kind of annoying to say that as well, because we have Dayusha.
Why are you like this?
Who had exactly what Luquia needed, a way to set up the soul properly. It is definitely weird to see Dayusha has such a heavy soul focus, but if you're thinking back in like the original Vanguard, when Dayusha became an actual archetype, the deck does have some kind of focus on the soul as well. So this technically is into the character, but let's be real here, the reason why Dayusha is such a good deck is because of die-based. Not only it is a great piece of card to include into the lore of the Robos, but also it is a card that really helped to solidify Dayusha as one of the better decks in the current format, or at least one of the better decks that is a new blood, as I'm willing to put Dayusha right behind Jiwa. Yes, I think his ability to get into grade 3 way better than the deck that was supposed to do that, ASL.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Is already a huge plus, but on top of that, he has more or less everything that he had back in the OG era as well, with cards that give him critical like Die Battles, ability to lock intercept out like Die Marines, give more power with Die Landers, a Die Dragon that is actually a shooter, and Die Lady, which actually helps you to search for a base card, aka Die Base, and being a really good attacker as well.
It was perfect. Perfect.
So Dayusha just simply has all the right pieces for an encounter deck, and I have to give props for Bushiroad for making Dayusha justice, despite it doesn't really play like the original D-Robo already. But yeah, I'm really stoked, even though I'm a Dark State main now, but I really stoked that one of my favorite OG unit has gotten a really good treatment. So yeah, okay, we have two more encounter right deck to talk about, and that is Vert and Coral. And I'll be honest, both of the deck kind of in the same power level scale as Dayusha actually. With Coral, I'm willing to put her in just a little bit lower, so like maybe behind Claudine, and Vert is right behind Dayusha. Okay, so let's start talking about Coral first. Coral, in my opinion, has a solid start in a sense that as long as you have Coral in your hand, the deck just goes off, and it works well with some of the strongest generic support in the Critical toolbox, and that is Aileen for the deck manipulation and Friendship for returning card from field back to hand.
That's it?
And these two cards makes enough impact on Coral for me to actually rank it so high into my tier. The only drawback I would say with Coral and the Woman, the deck is really bad at getting the Coral pieces to hand. But unlike Luquia, where the deck really need a proper setup, Coral really just need one Coral in your hand to get the whole engine started. So the starting engine is much lower, so that's why I'm willing to forgive the problem of Coral, which is no Coral cannot start. So because of that, I'm putting her into mid A tier. And then we have Vert. Vert, in my opinion, is pretty damn good, has a mass of Hydrangam skill without the need of having an order, able to search for herself very consistently thanks to Clear, has a decent draw power thanks to Rosa, and also counter shard as well. And she also has an extreme insane synergy with almost every single generic support you can think of in Critical deck,
which is nice and all.
The only drawback I would say with her is that her build tend to be quite fragile, because it's either you play her purely, which allow you to run front, and anything else you have to run draws, and of course lack of pressure, even though the deck technically can rush DZLBT well going into turn 3 onwards. And because of that, I'm willing to put her into a higher tier of A because of that. And don't worry, I know there are some decks that are not as strong that is above them right now. I will be adjusting it later. Okay, next up we have the Cray Cross Epic right lines, and we have 5 in total, even though we don't have the Stoic year 1.
Am I a joke to you?
Okay, so first off, let's get this stupid right line out of the way. Is currently the best deck in the format right now. I still stand on my opinion on losing offense for a little bit of a free card is still a deficit, but what I did not realize is that that is all the deck needs. Like the fact that you don't need to counter Blast for the skill already just makes so much difference for the deck. And not only that, the deck has a very interesting tech to go into 10 attack with just one single Ogi Jishi, which I think is also the reason why it is able to overwhelm decks that have more or less the same amount of attack but take just one turn a little bit longer, like Shiranui. I do still think Shiranui is very instant deck, but I feel in this current meta, Shoujodoji is just hard countering everything so easily thanks to how much attack it's actually able to deal on top of how strong the stealth engine is, and he is perfectly in tune with the stealth engine. But yeah, don't have to say anything more than that already. S tier it is for Shoujodoji, and I'll say this now, Shoujodoji and Shiranui are sharing the throne right now. Okay, next up we get to another deck update, and that is Archite. Archite for a long time was screwed over by how Bushiroad really tried to restrict the monster engine a lot because she's supposed to share the engine with Eva.
What did we ever do to you?
And for a long time, there's not a lot of monsters that really work well with Archite. So they decided to give a bunch of new monsters that work really well with Archite on top of a very fantastic update to Archite in the form of Innocent Monster in Paradise. Yes. Overall, I can safely say Archite is not in the Divine 7, I'll say this first, but she is definitely worth to be in the A+ tier, at least in my opinion. The deck now has a pressure thanks to Reveilist, and not only that, Reveilist also gives you power minus, ability to resist control, and also you have the lightning monster, I forget the name, which can help you to get additional draw as well. So in general, Archite just get all the pieces that it needed for the long time in one single booster, and it is safe to say she deserves to be praised as one of the great decks in the current meta right now. Unfortunately, she is not the best. And I can safely say now, the rest of the entry that we're gonna be adding in doesn't really make a huge splat except for one deck. So let's go through them relatively quickly. I'll try to put as much information as I can as well. So starting off with Glass, I'm putting him in high B tier, above Luquia. He has a great draw engine, and he also has a good ability to extend the game to really late. So a lot of decks that tends to overfilter their deck, like Shiranui, kind of struggle against Glass just a little bit. The problem with Glass, in my opinion, is the fact that it takes time to really wind up, and one single ladder just screw the deck over really hard. So because of that, I'm putting him in B tier feels right because of his speed as well as how much he gets screwed over by one single card, you know. And if you ask me if there's a way to improve the deck, I would say maybe something like Sequana for Glass would help a lot, like something that allow you to get back the drive that you minus from the Glass effect. That actually will make the deck whole lot more better, even if it is on the slower side regardless. And next up we have Undercover. Undercover, in my opinion, the best way to put it is that it is a really good archetype and a sub-engine for Shadow Paladin. But I think the deck itself is currently suffering from Eva syndrome, and it does hurt the deck quite a bit.
It's all because of you.
And because of that, I'm putting Modarian above Spino Marquis. If the deck is able to either take advantage of just simply throw up its set order better, or just a way to guarantee to get a third one regardless of whether you can set it on turn 3 or not, will help the decks a lot. But for now, it's a little bit lacking in terms of the pressure it can pull, which is kind of a shame because I do like the mechanic of the deck. Like, the deck has good card number, a card that can do additional drive check and hit really hard in the form of Obscurate, and then you have a lot of unusual but very solid utility that the deck do have. It's just kind of unfortunate that a lot of the cards in this deck really need
Modarian's buff
to really make the deck shine. And of course, maybe a counter charger will help the deck as well. And then we have the last from the Chronicle right line, and that is Sakita. I personally feel Sakita has a lot of good things going for her. She is essentially Honori the Vanguard, on top of being able to do multiple drive and also recoup the cost of this card at least once per turn. The problem with her, I would say right now, is that her support kind of clashes with the deck a little bit, in a way that, like, yes, even though the deck seems to want to go to 3 attack, you have a card that literally enable 4 attack, and all the card that triggers by being discarded, I feel it is not worth the time and the movement. Not good enough! And I feel maybe some card that help you to revive card back from drop zone, or something that allow you to make the Vanguard pressure a little bit better, I think it's more than enough. And maybe, of course, something that can call back Judge Maiden from drop will be fantastic as well. But for now, I'll give it B tier, I guess. Like behind Pacifica. Yeah, like behind Pacifica or something like that. Like the deck has a good base already. It's just 1-2 support away from being insanely good. And then we have the collab, which okay, I'll say this now. Benny is literally part of the Divine 7 right now, being at the 6th seat. I'll shift it down, so literally that will be at 6 just nice. So Benny, in my opinion, is essentially what if you make Barrow Magnus but actually balance in all aspects. The deck can draw really well, the deck can filter insanely well, the deck do a power minus on top of being able to hit a really solid number.
But wait! There's more!
And not only that, Versapo, Benny is also a representative for Versapo Nation, being the main right line you use to play if you chose to run Versapo as a nation. But even with that, I think the Dark State version of Benny is solid on her own as well, due to her great synergy with some of the modern Dark State support as well as the OG generic support, the Soul Engine.
It was perfect. Perfect.
And because of the success on both versions of the deck, she is currently sitting nice and snug at 6 slots in the Divine 7, top 7 essentially. And then we have Emma, which I'm gonna put her just above Overlord, because personally for me, she is a better Overlord, in the sense that you don't really need additional specific card to be in your soul to get the full benefit. And on top of that, she has, in my opinion, one of the most consistent and really insane control in terms of bind we have seen in a while, thanks to her partner Toto and Gonzalez combo, which allow you not only shut down your opponent board, but also shut down your opponent drop zone if needed to be. Overall, I think Emma is heavily underrated. But to be fair, Overlord playstyle has been losing relevancy recently, unless you are Waka, so she does struggle a little bit in that department. And the fact that the only base version of her has to be the Order Lord kind of hurts her a bit defensively as well.
It's a shame.
And then we have the weakest of the Versapo, and that is Runa. And I'm sorry to all the Runa simp out there, I'm gonna put her in D tier actually. Like, she's bad. Like, okay, she has ability to search for order consistently, which is nice. She does have a card that gives you counter charge, have hitting a decent number, and able to fetch the order back from your drop zone consistently is also nice. But over time, after looking through all the order in the Reincarnation and what Versapo has offered at the moment, not giving power to any units just hurt Runa way too much. I'll say this lah, if Runa came out back in like DBT6 during the Java release, she would be good. She would be one of the top deck to be played. But because of how high power scaling in this game is right now, she suffer way too much. And the fact that she rely heavily on order also means that she has a poor defense as well. So all these elements combined, she unfortunately is the weakest among the three.
I'll do better next time.
Okay, next up we have DZLBT03 right lines update, starting off with Medial, who get a huge promotion in my opinion into mid A tier. The reason why I'm putting her this high is because of the fact that we have Lulukuna already, which allow you to set up the board much better. Yes, you do rely on counter charge a lot, you do rely on soul a lot, and you do rely on your RNG a little bit to set up the drop properly. But here's the thing, as long as you set your drop properly, she just goes off. Even though her power is not high, the fact that she has a critical force your opponent to guard if possible, because if they don't guard, they will die very quickly. And thanks to some of the minor skill things like her ability to plus 5k to the front row as long as you have Media on your drop, and cards like Carpinhair, Noyola, and Alice together really make Medial pack a lot of punches. And I have seen some strong comments about Medial negatively, but I'll put it this way. If Shoutout can top the meta right now with just Ogijishi skill, then Medial with ability to have forward crit attack and just enough power to force your opponent to guard deserve to be in the A tier. So yeah, fight me in the comments for this one, because I think this will split opinions.
Come at me, bro.
And then we have Liu Fa, which has always been butt of the joke in my tier list a lot, because she is one of the hardest to play in the past because of how inconsistent her deck really is. But I can safely say the new form of her Brightest Dreamer, on top of a few more cards I've received like Funat, Apnias, and technically the Grade 3 Cycler, the one that get additional power when your opponent get a defensive.
Impressive.
I think Liu Fa finally get out of like the joke tier into a very solid tier, high B.
Interesting.
Okay, some of you might be thinking that's not a lot since the last time she's at the rock bottom of C tier. It is a huge promotion, especially considering she is essentially a defensive bastion. Like, that's the best way to describe her. Like, defensive bastion that has a Kyrie-esque skill. But the problem with her, I noticed the more I playtest her, is that she has power, she has utility, and say with me again, she lacks the pressure. High number doesn't mean a jack shit if your early game doesn't push as hard.
No. He's got a point.
And then next up we have Hazerit, which did get a huge boost in terms of capability to rush, and the deck is already good at rushing to begin with. And now the deck can trigger triggers a little bit more consistently thanks to Xenon, able to filter better thanks to Xenon.
That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
And able to hit at a much better number even with the weird base number that a lot of her Vanguard do has. But overall, I do think if I'm willing to put Medial in that high of a mid A tier, I'm willing to put Hazerit in roughly the same tier as her, because both of the deck has very similar skill set where they have a low power but they have enough rush or pressure to really push the opponent to 6 damage really quickly. So I would say these two decks roughly the same power level, at least in my opinion. And then we have Michu, which I'll put high A lah. I'll adjust her later, but personally for me, it's just like I already made my complaint about her in my video where I have a poor time testing her because like her drive shake just doesn't hit for me. But I know that the deck is really irritating to play against because of that 3 attack with additional drive for all of them, and that alone I feel is a pressure in itself, and that's why I'm willing to put Michu in high A tier. I think the only drawback I would say with the deck right now is that you still need to run all setup, which force you to soul charge, and you have to use all setup quite often because you want to play your cannonball for free, and that kind of makes her deck ran out really quickly because you draw a lot, you soul charge a lot even though you don't need the soul as much. So overall, I think she get a very insane support, but similar to Vilista, her old support kind of weight her back. But unlike Vilista, you have to play those old clunkiness in your deck. Okay, we're moving on to the last two, and let's talk about the deck that actually sees some relevancy in the higher tier right now, and surprisingly is Kyoka.
Why?
I already point out the problem with Kyoka already, and that is if your bingo luck is not there, you are struggling playing with her. But what I didn't realize is that a lot of people consider that additional attack that Kyoka enable really good. And you know what? I'll admit, I might have played Kyoka wrongly in the testing as well.
Are you fucking dumb?
But let's be real, the best part of her right now is the fact that she can easily search for PG thanks to her skill no longer force calling the unit but actually add the unit to hand, which actually makes her deck whole lot better. Meanwhile, you retain what makes Kyoka's Kyoka.
Of course!
Because of all these elements combined, I'm going to put Kyoka into A+ tier reluctantly. Like, I think she's strong, but I'm not sure whether she is strong enough to be in A+ tier or not. So she might got shift down later on. Okay, let's move on to the last right line to talk about that have a major support, and that is Lutetia. And I already made a video talking about it and saying that Lutetia, in my opinion, is the best upgrade to the support.
A bold claim.
What I'm surprised is that I'm not seeing a lot of result at the moment. I can kind of understand why. She is turn 4 deck, and turn 4 I feel start to see less relevancy unless you are stride decks.
Why are you like this?
Of course, this doesn't mean that Lutetia has lost the value because, let's be real, she is literally Dragonic Overlord the end with extra benefit for the fact that she can search her own curse play, on top of the fact that she buffed a whole entire front row by additional 10k on top of the Persona Right, making every single attack of hers really juicy. Not as juicy as the other deck that we're gonna be seeing in the next booster, but definitely juicy enough to be actually scared of. My guess here on the reason why Lutetia is not being heavily used right now is the fact that for one, there are just way too many aggro decks, and for two, she's very expensive.
Understandable. Have a nice day.
So because of that, with the pain in my heart, I have to put her down to behind Prism. I feel Prism aged better in the current format, so yeah. Okay, so I know there are some ranking that should be shifted. So let's do the rank shifting right now, and I will explain the reason why. So first off, I would put down two particular decks from the S tier into A+ tier, and that is Vaga and Eva. So Vaga, in my opinion, is still one of the best decks in the format, purely because of the fact that it is essentially a 3 Vanguard attack deck that actually has a lot of playability and still have a good counter to some of the deck in the higher tier. And the reason why some people might not think so is because of the fact that that it is an Overlord deck, and like what Kai said in the past, Overlord is Overlord. Overlord do Overlord things, and if you can't Overlord, you want Overlord. So simple as that.
You serious?
Next up is Eva, which I will shift her down behind Benny. The reason behind that is because Benny was exact counter that Eva don't really want to see because of her ability to put a rear guard into Soul. So because of that, Eva does lose a lot of power a little bit, and not only that, Benny is able to rush at Eva where she is at the weakest. So because of that, Eva see a little bit less play, but I do still think she is one of the strongest deck in the format, being a part of the Divine 7 at 7th seat.
Your era is coming to an end.
Then moving on to A+ tier, the deck that I want to shift that down. First we have Blankmeyer, who unfortunately immediately dropped into high A tier after one tier list.
That escalated quickly.
Blankmeyer Divine skill is a very oppressive skill, but as the people getting used to Blankmeyer, countering it is actually very easy. Just make sure you have OT in your hand. A lot of deck in the higher tier is either able to draw OT quite consistently or has a way to get away from Blankmeyer very easily through either guard early or essentially has a way to defend itself with things like the Festival Collection, Keter set or the pair. But I do have to say this, Blankmeyer might see a rise again thanks to a brand new support that we already confirmed gotta be getting. Next up, the deck that I want to bring it down is... I do think Dragewell still is a very good deck. Like, as long as you hit turn 4, you really shine. But right now, I think the early game rush has been getting better and better for a lot of decks in the higher tier, and Dragewell cannot cope up with that. So because of that, he has to drop off just a little bit. Okay, next up, before we continue, let's put the last two decks that I have in my mind into the Divine 7, the top 7 essentially, and that is Zorga at 5th place and Lianon at 3rd place. Okay, so let's get through a Zorga first. Zorga, we all know, Nadia is a really strong deck, and I'll say this again, I don't get it.
Why you pulling me? I'm right.
There are just way too many decks that Zorga can build into that actually fit the meta, and that is also its strongest point, its flexibility without losing on offense. Zorga can hit a ridiculously high number, meanwhile still have a lot of shenanigans around him, and I think he's still a pretty solid deck. And then Lianon. Okay, Lianon for me, I think it kind of boils down to the Bifrost situation with Dragewell. Remember how I said that Bifrost with Dragewell is an insane pairing because of how Bifrost's Excavate is a perfect fit for Dragewell? Lianon does get something similar to that in the form of Alvina. It doesn't mean much, but the fact that you can now call Rosalian Fairy a lot more easier without the need of going into Counterblast means a lot for Lianon. And on top of that, we got Broccoli. Okay, to be fair, this Broccoli is a plant token support, but some of the best Lianon build right now do run Roro engine as the right line, so Broccoli plays into the deck perfectly. Not only the cards help you to get additional draw, the cards also help you to get additional early game rush and power very well, on top of the fact that it also works as a shield. Like, a simple fact of giving additional draw, get its own 5k and gets its own 5k shield is enough to make Lianon play better in the early game, and because of how much Lianon rush can pull off in the late game as well, it just makes the deck so much better. And I'll say this now, I really glad Lianon finally has a time to shine, because during the time where she's supposed to be at the peak, all her peers in the same generation with things like Jiva, Yusberg, Dragewell kind of overshadow her, but now she finally have a time to shine thanks to her flexibility and insane synergy with some of the newer support that came out in the recent booster. But we still have to shift a few more decks down and out of the A+ tier because we have 13 entry now. I need to get rid of a few more. And I have two exact decks that I want to get rid of, and that is Chaos and Myco. So I'll leave Myco at the top here because of the discovery of the insane draw engine that Myco can actually achieve. She does seem a little bit of relevancy back a little bit, but unfortunately she also died off very quickly. Just like how Chaos see relevancy just for a bit and then he also died off very quickly. I mean, let's be real, Chaos is RNG Jesus. So if RNG is not in your favor, you are just asking for your ass to be screwed over 100 times or even more.
That escalated quickly.
So I feel these two decks technically is very good in the current format, but unfortunately not good enough for me to leave them in A+ tier.
Good job.
Good job, man.
And then we have the last deck I want to shift it down, and that is Fennel. I make Fennel as like a surprise A+ tier in my previous tier list, and I still think Fennel still have a strong potential. What kind of screw her up is the fact that her new support doesn't do anything for her at all. I'm not a Fennel expert here, so do leave in the comments if I'm wrong with this, but based on what I'm seeing, you don't really need that new card for Fennel at all. This means that in this format, Fennel stagnates just a little bit unfortunately for her, and because of that she have to make way for decks that I personally feel are better.
It's unfortunate.
Okay, so now that we are down to 10 A+ tier decks, we have to readjust and remove a few more decks out of the way first, as there are some new entries in the A+ tier. First off, we have Luard in the same tier as Raziel, with him leading in just a little bit. The reason is because of the fact that you technically can put in the set order engine if needed to. So he is technically can take advantage of it, even though it is a little bit weird as well.
It's still working!
Meanwhile, I will put two more decks down into high A actually, and that's Velstra and Prison. I do still think all the decks that I put from A+ tier down to A tier, these 7, I think they are still a good deck regardless, but I do feel that the current meta doesn't really bend in their favor that much. Like, Prison has to go first to win, which in my opinion is a little bit of like RNG thing, because like that means that you have to make sure that you go first all the time and then you can top. That is nice in its own, but I feel like it is not enough for me to leave her into A+ tier, but she is still a very strong deck that if you want to bring it to your tournament, I won't complain.
Respect.
And Velstra is in the similar position as well. These tier lists are not counting the July and August PR at the moment, because a lot of those cards also has a correlation with the DZBT04, so I decided to do that afterwards.
No. He's got a point.
So this current Velstra ranking will not take into account of that countercharger for now, and I do feel Velstra still has like a good potential. I feel like I have seen Velstra player in WGP manage to go 6-3 with the final result.
Hey, that's pretty good.
That's really good for a deck that haven't really get a decent support for a past 3-4 months by now. So I do think Velstra has a good potential. It's just way too fragile against opponents sacking against you back, especially defensively.
It never ends.
Okay, I know I've been talking too much about like the higher tier, so I'm gonna go through the lower tier as fast as I can. So let's get started, shall we? Starting off with Dire Foodles. Okay, this hurts me. Lower tier. The reason is because he's a defensive deck, and right now is leaning harder into a rush-based deck, a rush-based playstyle, but Dire Foodle at the moment is not able to keep up with multiple attacks that the deck has, and emphasize the deck is technically capable of tanking against decks like Shojoroji or even Shiranui. The deck still needs setup from Soul to be a little bit better and quicker, which currently the deck doesn't. Just a card that helps the deck to set up a little bit better would help the deck a lot as well.
Wait a minute.
Because I am here.
Next up, a bit of shifting. So I'm gonna shift Unica behind Vert, Omina behind Coral, and Jiwa just a little bit higher beside Gridon. This is just a little bit of simple re-ranking because some of these decks has a solution against some of the decks in the higher tier. And Omina, I feel like the shield mana is not enough for the deck right now. Like, I think the deck need the harshest shield mana, at least in my opinion. And then there is two more decks I want to actually put it in the A+ tier: Chrono Jet and Messiah.
What the fuck?
With Chrono Jet beside Luard and Messiah above Archive.
No, God! No, God, please, no!
Alright, keep your tits down for a little bit because I will go through exactly why I'm thinking all of the Strike deck are currently meta. So first off, let's talk Messiah. Okay, so recently I was able to acquainted with someone who has been playing Messiah as his main deck for some time already, and we were able to have some good discussion with it, and this is what he said when we were playing against each other as well.
Interesting.
What makes Messiah so good now is, for one, pertaining to myself, I finally understand how the PR order for both Chrono Jet and Messiah works, as you technically don't have to use it during your strike skill. You can use it on the strike that you are on. So you can use it to trigger Fed Rider for free, or in this case, trigger Amnesty Messiah's skill for free.
Genuinely disgusting.
The second thing is that while Rosa and Lyle is a really instant support for Messiah, I'm fully aware that it's supposed to be considered in the previous tier, but I didn't think it was able to help the deck this much. Because of that, this allows you to have a very disgusting combo that all the strike deck can do as well, where they use the grade 3 strike dragon cycle to ride a grade 3 to get a free draw first, using the discard dragon cycle to literally get that grade 3 dragon back and discard it again for the strike. This simple combo alone means that at a cost of 1 discard, you go +2. Yeah, that's how insane that simple but very effective combo really make things. And we already know Messiah hits ridiculously high number even at the first ride. So because of all these elements combined, I'm willing to put Messiah in the higher tier for all those crazy synergy that happen to fix some of the biggest issue that Messiah has. But why is it that I'm ranking Jet higher than Messiah? Well, my friend. Jet is one of those decks where he is more or less able to utilize almost every single generic support that we have received ever since the override start all the way until now. Like, let me quickly name you some example. By front, he technically can use it because it's a +1 to hand, it's a +1 to your soul, and it's +1 to your drop. Exactly what you need to recycle cards back to soul.
But wait!
Now you have Force Law together with Ghost or the Energy Cycler. You can use them to essentially help you to get even more draw for the deck.
There's more!
And last but not least, Fall and Reward this. This just make the early game for Jet really insane, and the deck scale extremely well into the late game right now. I think the only reason why you don't really see the Jet at the moment is that the deck does play a little bit like Overlord when you need to go to next stage, but as long as you can go into next stage, the deck will hit really hard and the deck tanks really well. Like, imagine how well Glass can tank, and that's a slow deck. Imagine that level of draw power, but in the deck that is much faster. That is Jet, at least based on my observation, even though I'm not seeing Jet being top right now.
Good.
And then last entry, I initially wanted to put this deck at a 9th place as both a joke and an honor because he was able to come in 9th place in the very recent WGP with one of the most unconventional decks I did not expect. And I think with his result, we have to say PBO finally have a moment to shine like MLB.
NANI?
And I will put him right beside him. Partially it's because of the undercover engine as well, as now you can actually fetch more or less anything that is under Shadow Paladin clan, and then you don't even need to run PBD anymore in this deck because the deck has enough pressure as it is already, thanks to Blaster Dark multiple drive checks and ability to be able to rush as well. So in the honor of my friend Jason the Undisputed, to check his channel out, I will put PBO in high A tier in that honor of him actually hit 9th place on the WGP Singapore Season 2. And that's the end of rank adjustment in this tier list. I'm fully aware there is a lot of deck to go through that I did not do anything at all, but I personally feel that whole list re-rank deserve to be done once a year, not only just to make my life easier, but it also is a nice way to see how much Vanguard changes within the span of a year. But I'm fully aware as well that there is a lot of support that I did not mention. Most of them are the double R supports that we have received, so I'm gonna go through some of the more notable ones, but I will not shift the rank because I personally feel these supports are good, but they are not good enough to bring the deck to the next level. So the only one that I feel I forget to mention in DZBT03 is the Narukami one for Vermilion. It's a nice card to help you to push in the earlier part of the game and a way for you to get additional draw in the later part of the game as well. But I do feel for decks like Vermilion, you need a bit more draw power than that to actually make the deck better. Next up, we have mostly of the really core support. First, we have Roro Nero support. Filter is nice. Having another Reka that hit really hard is nice as well. But I feel Roro needs more than that to really fix some of the issue that she has, because she is a deck that is kind of locked behind turn 4 because of the way her deck works. Willistar also get quite a good card with ability to recycle gem or Persona right from drop, but I do feel that like it doesn't change way too much. It just makes life easier for Willistar to loop, and that is pretty much it. It doesn't really make the deck a lot more oppressive whatsoever. And then we have Clarissa, which have an okay support in one of them and the other is complete bullshit, but the one that it does matter is pretty okay, as it does give additional power to one of the additional attack that you restand, as it is a booster restand. And then we have Sienna, which did get a card that literally give additional attack, but I personally feel what the deck needs is its own Blitz order that actually work well with Sienna play playstyle. But having additional attack is always nice. And that's a proper end to my DZBT03 and Relical Booster. I'm fully aware, once again, that I do know that there might be some entry I actually missed, so do leave down the comments below which entry I should take into consideration as well. But yeah, that's all I have for today. Take care of yourself, don't forget to clap that stuff and become a member for some cool perks. And this is Mac Megane. See you guys in a next tier list. Shouldn't take too long. Like, I mean, my life feels a lot easier after went through the hell that is Relical Booster. So yeah, じゃあね。